بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله الأمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I believe we have hadith number 13 with us, the hadith of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. May Allah be pleased with him. So who will read it for us? Yes, brother.
Narrated Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, the Prophet, may the blessings of Allah and peace be upon him, said, while defecating, neither face nor turn your back to the Qibla, but face either east or west. Abu Ayyub added, when we arrived in Sham, we came across some lavatories facing the Qibla. Therefore, we turned ourselves while using them and asked for Allah's forgiveness.
Okay. This hadith of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, may Allah be pleased with him, and we know how important Abu Ayyub is to us. What is he well known for? Yes, he was the host of the Prophet ﷺ when he first migrated from Mecca to Medina, and the Prophet stayed there for maybe a month or two, Allah knows how long. And we know also that he is among the companions who were buried in Turkey, Constantinople, as he surrounded it with the Muslim army, though he was blind. And though he was over his 80s, he could not fight. Blind and so old, but he wanted to give moral support to the Muslims by being with them so that he would enlarge the army. And this is a great thing that Muslims should always put in mind. When you are with the non-Muslims, you're making their group bigger. So if there are 10 non-Muslims and 2 Muslims with them, anyone who looks, he would say that there are 12. So you're giving them value, you're adding value to them. You should not do this. You should always commit yourself and be among the Muslims as a whole group. And that is why one of the sunnah of Salatu al-Eid, the prayer of Eid, is that the Prophet used to go from one way and come back from a different route. Scholars say, why? One of the justifications, and this will come inshallah later on, they say that this is so that the Prophet would give salam to as many as possible around the Medina. And others said no, this was to impress the hypocrites and the disbelievers. Whenever they saw so huge people going to the masjid, and those who came back are others, not the same faces. So they, oh, these are the Muslims, they're that big and they're that strong. Now, Abu Ayyub, may Allah be pleased with him, is telling us about something that we should do when answering the call of nature. And as reported or stated before in previous programs, Islam governs every single thing in our lives. Not only prayer and fasting and pilgrimage, but even how to answer the call of nature. And this is what the Jews found it ridiculous. As in Sahih Muslim, they said to Salman al-Farisi, your Prophet taught you everything, even how to defecate? And he said, yes. He instructed us not to face or give our backs to the Qibla. So, the hadith, the Prophet says, whenever you want to answer the call of nature, do not face the Qibla and do not give your back to it. So it's not only while defecating or urinating. You should not give your back or you should not face the Qibla. What is the Qibla? This is, of course, you're all Muslims, but sometimes maybe non-Muslims are watching us. So they say, what is Qibla? Qibla is the direction that Muslims face when they pray. And this direction is Mecca. And in Mecca there is the cubic building which is known as Al-Kaaba. So this is our Qibla. Out of respect, when people direct to it for prayer, the Prophet says, do not face it or give your backs to it when you're answering the call of nature. But head east or west. So here in India, should we head east or west? North and south. But the Prophet said east and west. Why? because in Medina, their Qibla was to the south of Medina. So the Prophet is telling them, do not face south or north, because this is facing and giving you back. But if you apply this literally to people in India, it would not be the same. Because if they face east or west, they would be doing what the Prophet told them not to do. So they have to face north or south. Understood, inshallah? Taib. Now, Abu Ayyub, may Allah be pleased with him, said that when we went to Asham, what is Asham? It is Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan. This area is the blessed area known as Asham. Politically, nowadays Asham is only mentioned as Syria, politically. But regionally, or how it used to be known as, this was mentioned about the 4 countries. So he said when we went there, we found that they had toilets, but their toilets were directing to Al-Qibla. So what did he do? He said, we turned ourselves while using them and sought Allah's forgiveness. So if the toilet was built in the direction of Qibla, he used to sit doing this, so that he would divert himself from facing the Qibla, and he would also add to that seeking Allah's forgiveness. Not only he would turn away, but he would also ask Allah for forgiveness, as he does not know if Allah would forgive or not. Now, the question is, what is the ruling on facing the Qibla and giving your back to it? Is it completely forbidden? Not recommended? One is not recommended, one is forbidden. Both are permissible. It's an issue of dispute among scholars. And before we go into that dispute, we would like someone of you to read the following hadith. Hadith number 14.
Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. I went up to the roof of Hafsa's house for some need, and I saw Allah's apostle, may the blessing of Allah and peace be upon him, answering the call of nature, facing Sham, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, then regarded as one country, with his back towards the Qibla.
Okay, this hadith was reported in Al-Bukhari. First of all, Ibn Umar, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, went on top of Hafsa's house. Who was Hafsa? The wife of the Prophet ﷺ, the mother of the believers. And what is her relation to Abdullah? She is his sister. He said that I climbed over the roof. He had something, but accidentally saw the Prophet ﷺ answering the call of nature. He wasn't spying, because spying on the Prophet is an act of blasphemy. If a person does this intentionally, he would have committed an act of apostasy, kufr. This is ridda. He has to be executed. Why did he do this? It was unintentional. He went up to get something from the roof, he went up to pray, he went up to sunbathe. Of course this is hypothetical, but he went for any legitimate reason. Now, we have 2 hadiths. Abu Ayyub tells us, the Prophet says, do not. And the Prophet here was giving his back. That is why scholars differed, as they usually do. And that is why we are instructed to go back to the Quran and Sunnah to find out which is the most closest opinion that would please Allah Azza wa Jal. And therefore, as we stated before, if you recall, whenever we have 2 conflicting evidences, what is the first thing we do? We try to reconcile and join together. If not, one abrogates the other. If not, one is stronger than the other. If not, we abstain until someone else finds the answer and informs us. So we go on to this conflicting issue. The Prophet says don't do it, and then ends up doing it himself. What to do? Scholars say one of the opinions is always apply what he has said and neglect what he has done. Why? Because sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tells us to do something. This is part of Islam. by not doing it or by doing something else, there is a possibility that it is an exception for him, a speciality for the Prophet. So, for example, we are told wherever you go to sleep and wake up, if you want to pray, what should you do? Do you have to make ablution? However, in the Sahih, Mother Aisha tells us that the Prophet ﷺ went into deep sleep until he snored. Yani he was asleep. You know, the Prophet was so tired during the day, he only slept an hour or two. So when he slept really bad. And then he woke up for Fajr and went to pray without wudu. Aisha said, "O Prophet of Allah, where are you going?" "I'm going to pray." He said, "Yes, but you slept until you snored." He said, "Aisha, I am not like you, all of you. My eyes sleep, but my heart never sleeps." Meaning that I know if I've nullified my wudu or not. So this is what? A speciality. I don't want someone tomorrow waking for Fajr prayer and going to prayer. Say, "What's this?" Said, "My heart never sleeps, but my eye sleeps." Akhi, you sleep, your heart sleep, your kidneys sleep, everything in you falls into deep sleep even when you're awake. We have a break. Stay tuned and inshallah we'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Going back to our hadith. So there are cases where the Prophet ﷺ has special features that we cannot share with him. Another example, Allah tells us in the Quran, marry 2, 3 or 4, and if you are afraid that you will not be fair or just, then only have 1. This is the instruction of Allah. It's permissible for us to marry 4. A lot of the Muslims now are happy to have only 1, or actually they are not up to having more than 2, because survival is more tasty and beautiful than dying or being tortured. So they agree on just keeping 1. No problem. The Prophet had more than 4. The Prophet died marrying 9 at the same time. So one would say, okay, I will do this. No, this is a special case for the Prophet, a privilege from Allah Azza wa Jal. It's not for me and for you. And there are so many examples. So the scholars say, when the Prophet tells us to do something and he does something not like it, there is a possibility that this is special for him. So we always go with what he had said. We go with the rhetoric, we don't go with the action. This is one way of doing it. However, there is another way of looking at it by saying that, yes, when the Prophet says, don't do this, and he does it, this means that it is not forbidden, but it is not recommended. And they give an example. The Prophet ﷺ forbade us from drinking while standing up. He said this is not permissible. Do not drink while standing up. And in the Bukhari, in the authentic hadith, the Prophet came to Zamzam and he drank from it standing up. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, I don't care whether I drink standing up or sitting down, because I've seen the Prophet drink standing up. So scholars said, what to do? The first, do not drink standing up. They said, okay, in this case, it is not forbidden. It is not recommended. Why? How do we know this? Usul al-fiqh, fundamentals of fiqh. A rule of thumb. Whenever there is an instruction or a rule or an order in the Quran or in the Sunnah, this is obligation. Unless another hadith or ayah or something makes it from obligation into mustahab, recommended. And whenever there is a prohibition in the Quran or in the Sunnah, this is haram, this is prohibited, this is forbidden, unless another evidence makes it softer and makes it makruh or unrecommended. So this is something we learn from usul al-fiqh. Now we would like to apply this on what we have here. The Prophet said alayhi salatu wassalam, don't, and he himself did it. So what to do? The scholars differed over 6 or 7 or even 8 opinions regarding facing and giving your back to the Qibla while answering the call of nature. And Al-Imam al-Shawkani in his beautiful book, Nailul Awtar, a big book made of 4 or 5 volumes. It's actually made of 9, but when printed, 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 or 3 makes it 4 or 5 volumes altogether. He said, and he mentioned these different opinions. Some scholars said it is completely prohibited to face or to give your back when answering the call of nature, period. Full stop. Who backs this up? Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh al-Islam ibn al-Qayyim, and a number of scholars. Other scholars say, this is the hardest, Other scholars say, no, you have to look. If it's in the open, if it's in a place outside of buildings, if it's outdoors, then it is prohibited for you to face or to give your back to the Qibla. But when indoors, because you have walls in front of you, you would not be actually insulting the Kaaba, your Qibla, because there are walls in front of you. This is okay. Third, some say it is permissible to urinate in the direction but not to defecate. Some would say this is dependent also, you can add to that, facing the moon or the sun. They even added that is not permissible. And some even added the Jerusalem, Bayt al-Maqdis, or Masjid al-Aqsa. All of these are different opinions of scholars. So what is the most authentic opinion? The safest is the first one. Do not face or give your back to the Qibla. The more realistic and in accordance to the majority of scholars, that as long as you are indoors, as long as the toilets in your house, it's closed and it's surrounded by wall, it is okay. However, it is recommended that you turn away, as Abu Ayyub used to do, may Allah be pleased with him. But the safest is always not to do it. And this is illustrated when one of you builds a house. When you build a house, definitely you will be sinful if you instruct the engineer to have it in the face of Qibla. Sheikh, it's a small toilet, I don't have much space to maneuver. It's your problem. It is your house, you're building it. You have to build it on the Islamic foundation. But if you buy a already made house, if you go to a hotel room, if you rented a place and you're unable to do this, then I hope and pray to Allah that this is okay, inshallah. Now, one of the things that we have to bear in mind, do you know that spitting in the direction of the Qibla while praying is prohibited? You all know this, because the hadith is clear. The Prophet ﷺ saw a man leading prayer. There are people behind him, and while he was leading prayer, he spit in the prayer. The Prophet said, this man must never ever lead anyone in prayer. Why? Because this is a great sign of disrespect. Now, what you did not know, or what you do not know, is that there are scholars that even went an extra mile by saying not only in prayer, even if you're not in prayer, it is not permissible for you to spit in the direction of Qibla. Why? Because this shows disrespect. And among those who chose this opinion, Sheikh Nasruddin al-Albani, may Allah have mercy on his soul. He supports this opinion and he says that it is forbidden. He has his evidences and allegation. However, the majority of Muslims say, no, it is only limited to prayer. Nevertheless, always it's better to be safe than sorry. Akhi, you don't have any place else to spit except in the direction of Qibla? You do. So out of respect, try to avoid doing these awful things and bad things in the direction of Qibla. So I believe before going to the following hadith, we will take your questions. Yes, brother.
Sheikh, nowadays, most of the time in Salah, the mobile rings, So, and
good question.
Most of the time it is film songs and, so you are praying, others are getting distracted. So, what is recommended, mandatory, what? To switch off?
I'll tell you. First of all, when a mobile rings, it is mandatory for you to turn it off. Yes, movement is put your hand, turn it off, look and unlock the key and turn off the mobile or put it on silent. Now, a lot of the Muslims, they hang up. And the man calls again and again and again. So you end up having him calling you throughout the prayer. You've occupied yourself and everyone in the masjid. What to do? If the mobile rings, answer it. If the mobile rings, answer it, because the person calling you, he will hear the salah. He'll know that you're praying, so he'll not call again. But if you hang up, he says maybe he hung up because he doesn't want to talk to me. Maybe he hung up by mistake. Maybe he hung up because the network is not working. So you answer it, first of all. Second of all, he's saying that people are putting ringtones as movies, as songs. This is haram in your prayer or outside your prayer. It is not permissible at all to put any melody or song as a ringtone. One. It is not permissible at all to put Quran in your ringtone. Someone said, Allahu la ilaha illahu, and he answers. The ayah is not finished. And even worse, he would say, Allahu la ilaha. There's no God. And he answers. And this is distracting the meaning. It is not permissible to have the adhan as a ringtone. Why? Because adhan is a form of worship, and Allah made it to call people and to know that this is the time for salah. So if you're playing it at 12 o'clock in the evening, there is no salah, so you're making fun of the adhan. Is it permissible to have dua? Sheikh Sudais, Allahumma hadina fi man hadayt wa afina fi man afayt. This is an issue of dispute among scholars. I personally would consider it showing off. Why are you making the dua as your ringtone? You want to listen to the dua? No, I want the people to know that I am a righteous person, I'm committed to Islam. What's the ruling on having nasheed? Putting Afasi, putting Bukhatir, putting Zain Beka or whoever. A nasheed is a nasheed. It's poetry. No duf. As long as there is no duf, it's okay. But again, for men maybe it is acceptable. It is extremely inappropriate for a woman to carry a mobile, and then while in the market, while in somewhere, you hear this nasheed coming out and everybody's looking at her. You try to make a low profile. So yes, if you get this in prayer, you have to turn it off. And better more, before you go to prayer, always try your best to make it on silent. If you have any music related ringtones, it is completely prohibited. Don't be sinful. Not only that, get the sins of those who listen. Because when I listen to you, your mobile ring, and it's a song that reminds me of the good old days, oh, I think I'm going to download it from the internet. Or if it's a new song, it's like, I don't know this song. This singer is very nice voice. What song is it? And I download it. Then you take all the sins that I do because of your ringtone. I'm afraid that this is all the time we have until we meet next time. Fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.